we have the second largest barrier reef and a plethora of mangroves throughout our coastline. And one of the studies for about maybe $1 million was tsunami watch. Right? So we have to be real. We have to look at the issues that we have in front of us and say, here, how do we best deal with these challenges? We have a tsunami watch and we don't have nothing for sargassum. And it's pounding our coastlines. Minister Valérie just showed me some pictures of her half of St. Martin. And it's terrible, right? Her half of St. Martin. And it's terrible, right? Her
John B.
half of St. Martin. I don't know if that...
Just play.
This Zen thing really to get to me. I think that the inner boy to talk to me just now. Yeah, but from day one, Belize has embraced the idea, and I think flagged to the world that we're serious about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, cultural tourism, and that has been our strength. If you look at the makeup over the years, we have about 1,200 different types of properties all across the country that have rooms, whatever, condos, timeshare, others, and we have about 12,000 rooms. So the average size of a property in Belize is 10 rooms. That in itself leads to local ownership. That in itself leads to sustainability. Now, over the last few years, we've gotten a little bit bigger in terms of the properties, and that's needed. But sustainability has always been at our core. We have pushed that, we have flagged that in all our policies, our strategies. But like I said, strategies sometimes just sit on a shelf. It's how do you make them actionable? How do you implement the policies and the strategies that smart people have devised for us and say that is best for us? So we have to take it on ourselves to do the implementation, to turn it into action rather than just sitting on a shelf. Like I said, we had $3 or $4 million worth when we got into government.
Okay. Minister Habet, I have to give you the chance to follow up. Up, not down, up, right.
Up and down.
Up, not down.
Yes. Pleasant good morning, everyone. Yes, for me, we got into office in November of 2020. A little shock for me because one, we were into full-fledged COVID, and my background is not in sustainable development. My background is in animal science and agriculture. But I was speaking to two ladies this morning over breakfast from UB, and they told me, but once you have the science background, it is easier to move through. But it took me a few months to start to gather what it is that I had to do in the Ministry of Sustainable Development, because it also includes the Department of Environment. We have the National Protected Areas System Act, which governs most of the areas that we function under. And we have the Forest Department, which is an extractive industry in most of it. We have a branch off from there for the National Biodiversity Office, which that also looks at our protected areas, but it works closely with whatever has to do with tourism. Certainly, as Minister mentioned, we have the Protected Areas Conservation Trust, which gets some funding through the tourism exit dollar from the tourists to provide assistance for those protected area managers. And so, looking at it from that standpoint, I myself am also a small farmer, and I wanted to see how that connectivity could come in also with the nexus between agriculture and tourism, because it hasn't been discussed much yesterday and this morning, but the speaker this morning mentioned some of it. So that is also important, because how do you start providing for the tourism sector, the hospitality sector from the agriculture sector? But we have some beautiful places in Belize. Our natural resources are our greatest asset. And so personally, I believe that our environment, our natural assets are actually the infrastructure for tourism. And I think it is where we have to go from here, looking at what potentials we have. I was speaking to the minister some time ago that we have to look at other areas because the amount of tourists we have, if we continue on that path, if we do not check what we are doing, then we may be over-impacting certain visitor sites. Luckily for COVID, in 2020, 2021, we had a visitor site, which is a cave system, which was over-impacted. But for 3 years of COVID, there were no tourists, and it is amazing how nature works because it recovered quickly in 3 years. Yeah. But we have other areas that are so beautiful, so we have to look at other areas. But I think during the conversation, we'll speak more of that because we have to see how we can exploit these areas sustainably.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me bring in Tobago now, Ms. Hackett. I know that you may be sitting there saying, boy, can I compete with Belize? Show them.
Good morning, colleagues. And you know, you've been saying Miss Tobago, but I'm actually here in my capacity as proxy to Minister of Trade, Investment, and Tourism. So I have to actually say Trinidad and Tobago. And I feel good that Trinidad and Tobago is finally represented once more here at the CTO. Trinidad has been out of the fray for a bit. And I implore the Minister Maharaj, listen, we can't be saying Trinidad and Tobago and speaking about this diverse, rich, yet, you know, distinct community of 2 islands, 1 state, and then only Tobago is a, you know, when it matters. And so we had a decision made, and thank you so much, General Secretary, for allowing Minister Maharaj to have me as his proxy. And so in this particular discussion, I'm here as Trinidad and Tobago.
Trini to the bone.
Trinbago to the bone. So yes, I heard y'all giving, you know, your snapshots and getting right into it when I thought we were supposed to be doing introductions. So my strength has actually been education. In the previous term of our administration, I was Secretary of Education, Research and Technology. But there's just something passionate and purposeful about standing on any stage representing who you are as a people. And I mean, what more than this particular week when we had a YouTuber moving around the space. He's currently probably in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today with about 53+ million followers, you know, looking at what we have to offer as a people. And so I found it very timely for us to be having this conversation as he's moving through, and the focus is currently on the Caribbean and what we have to offer to the world. But of course, while he's moving through, we're paying attention to what every individual territory is doing, your way of life, and how you've really been putting sustainable tourism into work and into practice. And the teacher in me has been taking lots of notes, copious notes at that, as to what we've been doing and how we've been selling what we do to our colleagues, and the fact that we need to have some more integration as a region as it relates to sustainable tourism. And so I'm very happy, you know, that we're here to learn from each other, I think, more importantly than just to celebrate what we do in silos. I think whenever we come together as a Caribbean, it should be to share. Best practices must be at the fore, and we must be able to learn from each other. I was speaking to my colleague, and I was like, listen, we need to be real. When we don't know, we need to admit it, and we need to not be as competitive as we are, and be able to celebrate each other's wins, because to the wider world, we're one region. You know, we try to see ourselves as individuals, but we really are, and so there's always strength in numbers, and I always go for quality over quantity. And so when we put and harness our individual strengths together, we're only more solid as a region. So thank you for being here as Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Rogers. And I'm very proud to say that, red, white, and black to my heart.
There you go. Thank you very much. You're speaking the CTO mandate there. Let me now introduce and give an opportunity for the commissioner from Samatan to share with you what she is doing and the impact that her country has had in this whole tourism industry.
I'm only going to speak if you speak French. Bonjour à tous.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Ça va?
Alors, on peut en débattre ce matin en français.
Hello.
Oui,
Okay.
c'est bon.
Enough of
Oui,
that.
oui.
Enough of that. Enough of
Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure for me to be here this morning. I mean, when I was asked to speak on the panel, I was like, what? For the simple reason that as much as I have been in this position, I started in 2017 as the Minister of Tourism, Culture, Sports, Youth Affairs, and etc. I can go on and on. I was very lucky and grateful enough to be re-elected in this position as your Commissioner of Tourism and Culture in 2022. And someone said yesterday, but before I said that, the reason why I was like, I don't think I can speak on a sustainable tourism conference, the reason for which we always look at the environmental part. And I say us in the tourism industry, I feel like we're hypocrites sometimes. We want more people to the destination. We want to give these excursions. We want to, we are doing so much. Even our own people are like, you're talking about no more low season. We want to have an all year round season. But no, we want the tourists to go back so we can enjoy our home. We can access our beaches without being crowded. We can actually take our roads without it being a traffic from morning till God knows what time. So that's my inside joke all the time. And my assistant is in the back. I was like, I don't think they want me to speak the truth. So I am grateful for the opportunity, and why I insist a lot on tourism and culture. And someone said it yesterday. I don't want to get it bad at all. If tourism is the economy, then culture is the infrastructure. Now, I think a lot of us should say this boldly with our chests, because when I took up this task, and I emphasize on the importance of placing culture at the heart of our tourism product. Yes, we are one. We build up an itinerary. We are part of a region where we need to be proud of. However, what stands out all the time, and I hear it over and under, speaking in the orange economy, is the cultural, authentic part of it that only you can and is responsible for. At the end of the day, AI and everything else can come in, but that authenticity side, well, I challenged AI to take that up because it's not going to be possible. So again, in front of you, born and raised in Martina, I am grateful for, like I said, getting this opportunity and 2 mandates to actually represent St. Martin on this international, regional level, that we continue to promote and market our destination as a tourism destination, but all keeping in mind the well-being of our people, and of course, continuing, I mean it in the most humblest way possible, to place culture at the center of it all.
You set the table now for the real focus on. I think this is very significant in that we often see tourism as the matter of getting people here, travel, accommodation, etc., and to a lesser extent, the cultural elements, which are significant in terms of being part of that product. In some cases, I know from my own experience over many years, culture is a little low down and only comes up at particular times. It is not consistent. I want to challenge Minister Mahler to talk about that, because the culture of Belize is so rich that you have an opportunity to share this with every visitor to the country. Can you talk about that and what you've done so far?
Right. For me, that has been a huge part of our product for a long time. In fact, when I became Minister of Tourism, first thing I did was to implement a sustainability desk at the Belize Tourism Board and a cultural desk at the Belize Tourism Board. And we engage the local communities, if it's the Maya Stay Down South, or the Garifuna Immersive Experience, or the Chocolate Experience, or the Creole Experience. The authenticity is there, and that's where you have the connection and the vibe between people. I often tell, for example, our tour guides, you can go to any of our huge archaeological sites, and people can just walk the site and look at them by themselves, but they truly get the experience from what the guide is doing, and they understand better this historical value that gives for Belize and this region, and then it connects people from New Zealand to the cultures here in Belize, then you educate people, and then people become aware, people become conscious, and that's how you build. That's the importance of tourism overall. But we're so diverse as a culture. You saw just a taste of it last night with some of the foods that we had. And that's another thing, so different music, different food, different dress, different way of living. And so we have all of that packaged in a small piece of real estate that you can access. And so for us, whether it's the Garifuna Trail project or something else that we're working on, it is a critical part of our product.
Let me give Ms. Hackett an opportunity, because I think this dovetails straight with your kind of tourist product.
Sure. So my administration, and we came into office in December 2021, what we immediately did is paired the creative industries with tourism. As a matter of fact, this iteration of government actually has, as one of the departments under my purview, creative industries. We used to be the Division of Tourism, Antiquities, Culture, and Transportation. And so we rearranged and upgraded because we understood the importance of the orange economy to our tourism product, and the fact that as a subset of this territory, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago's autonomy as it relates to what we do with our tourism, we were able to see the importance and the inextricable link between tourism and the creative industries. And so what we've also done as a Tobago House of Assembly, with the support of a central government, is focus on having a standalone division that treats with the environment, climate resilience, and energy. And that particular secretary works directly with me in the protection and preservation of what we do in terms of orange, green, and blue. And so I don't know if you're aware, but tomorrow, actually this entire week, we've been celebrating what we call Main Ridge Week. And on the 30th of April, that is Thursday, we are going to celebrate actually 250 years of the oldest protected rainforest in the Western Hemisphere, having been placed in our legislation in the first iteration of the Tobago House of Assembly on the 30th of April, 1776. So just last week, we celebrated new legislation to protect our Buku Reef Marine Park. I don't know if you're also aware of a tragedy that occurred there about 2 weeks or so ago with a jet ski, and the fact that we did not have the legislation to protect the marine park space, although 250 years ago, Tobago was able to protect our main ridge. And so because we understand the importance of the economies like that, we set up our governance structure in a particular way to not operate in silos. And then, of course, to be given the opportunity from central government to be able to chart our own destiny in the industry that is most pivotal for us in Tobago. And so, as you would appreciate, Minister Maharaj's portfolio treats with investment, trade, and tourism. But for Tobago, tourism is at the forefront with the antiquities, which is a protection of everything that treats with our historical past, and then again the orange economy in all its tenets, ensuring that we focus on that. But what I want to also celebrate is the fact that we continue learning from our Caribbean neighbors. And I spoke to it before. No man is an island, and I mean that's probably a pun intended here. But we all look at legislation coming out of even you, Belize, and I had to do some research on how much you were able to treat with your natural assets, and the fact that you can celebrate second largest barrier reef in the world, and the fact that this one region has so many to celebrate. I mean, if you didn't know about this 250 years designated conservation space, you now do. And you can each in this room find something, although we're very little in this space, that is very monumental and hugely celebrated. And again, once we put these assets together, we're definitely a force to be reckoned with. So yes, in Trinidad and Tobago, we've been celebrating our intentional approach to tourism and the fact that these other industries, again, so inextricably linked that, you cannot operate in silos. And there's a bigger picture for us here as Caribbean people.
I want to ask Ms. Damaseau to talk about the recovery of St. Martin.
Yes, I mean, in 2017, just think about it for a few seconds. I mean, elected in March 2017, you got installed on the 2nd of April 2017, and you all happy with a plan and a program that you have campaigned on years ago, and boom, in September, you're washed away by Hurricane Irma. Now, I always say in every bad, there's a good. Now, choose to see the glass half full and not half empty. So in that situation, I looked at it with the rest of my colleagues that here we are with a blank sheet. A blank sheet that gives us, because before Hurricane Irma in 2017, in 1995, we were hit with one of the largest hurricanes as well, which was Hurricane Lois. And that is the time that St. Martin lost everything, which means all our hotel rooms. We have been on the whole rampage of a strong tourism product. And we find ourselves after 1995 having to start it all over again. I can't sing, but yeah. So and again, from since then, we have been, and if you look at it on a tourism angle, been fighting to rebuild or find persons that will be interested to come back and invest. But more importantly, as citizens of that island, we still have had issues with even getting insurance to insure your home so that you can better prepare yourself for what is to come, because we know that that's the price we pay for living in paradise, right? This is the price we pay for as Caribbean people. So I say that to say what? Here comes 2017 with another hurricane that has not been measured up to today of, what type of category, as much as everyone is trying. And you know what? It's not reassuring, because I fear for my daughter that is going to be 14 this year, what they're going to face in the years to come with this climate change. So when that happened again, of course, here we are again at our knees, at our lowest, because now everything is demolished. But again, with this clean slate, you're telling yourself now you need to rebuild smarter. You need to rebuild. We talk about resilience and so forth. That's when it shows, where community comes together and everything comes after. So with this blank sheet, it was decided that we're not just going to rebuild any kind of house. There was a voting for what we call a prevention plan. I'm looking for my word in English, PPRN, or prevention plan against natural disasters, hurricanes, tsunamis, and so much more. And we were able to define zonage, red, blue, green, white, those that can be for economical use. And if persons wanted to rebuild, then you have to rebuild. You can rebuild as is, but if you're going to do a new building, then you have to take into consideration that you must have what we call a safe room. If you're anywhere alongside the seaside, then we advise that below do not be bedrooms. They can be like the living spaces, but at least your sleeping will be at above. And we encourage economical development along the seaside, simply because then when it's a hurricane season or we have an alert, then we know that no one is actually there. Even in the hotel rooms, we actually decided as well that in each hotel room there is what you call a bunker, and also key safe spaces. In addition to that, rebuilding after something like Hurricane Irma give you an opportunity to not only rebuild smarter, but also educate and formation, train your staff, actually give you a chance to rebuild and build a product that is more on an innovative manner. So politically, what we did encourage with a financial disposition we put in place, where we encourage all businesses, as you're going to rebuild in this tourism industry, that you got X amount, I'm not going to tell you how much per room, that you're able to refurnish, rebuild those rooms. But we're not talking about facts anymore. We're talking about the internet. We're talking about smarter televisions. A more innovative way of rebuilding, so that you can in the future as well be sustainable. Because if you're going to start all over again every time, then you're not moving smartly. Something I want to highlight as well, what we were able to do was actually have all our infrastructures on the ground. So again, after rebuilding, you study all the areas where, of course, there's no internet. There are homes. I mean, I'm from a district called French Quarter. Up to today, we still don't have full internet access, telephone connectivity, and so forth. But the goal right now is to make sure that everything is on the ground, from the sewage system, the electricity, the internet, everything. And last but not least, because I can go on and on, but something that is important as well is that we have decided that we want a smaller boutique model hotel industry and not a mass tourism industry. And that has shown great success for us. When I say that, with all the hotels and all the businesses that has lost their way since 1995 leading up to 2017, if we do have investors that come to the island, we're not going to encourage you to cut our hills and build there. We're going to encourage you to rebuild or renovate or remodel this existing, we say friche, but it's a structure that was there. Because then everything to do with electricity, internet, the water sewage and everything is already connected there, instead of us again trying to bust and cut and do all of that. So those are key elements that we held dear to our hearts to make sure that we control the narrative, and as well state that on the French side we only want to reach to 3,500 hotel rooms, 3,500 rooms on a whole. It can be at sea, it can be Airbnb, it can be boutique hotels, it can, but we don't want more than that because we cannot. In parallel, what we do, we look at also the housing issue on St. Martin, because then everyone have a hard time finding homes. So we actually put in place a housing project that actually helps us define between now and the years to come how many homes we'll be able to provide and how many people we'll be able to receive. Because we can't continue pushing and building, and we are talking about sustainable, we are talking about the economical and environmental problem that we are facing. So there must be a wider based study down the line of what is your capacity and when enough is enough.
I'm sitting here thinking that maybe Belize could lend you an island, huh? Or two.
See, that's why I say you need to know when enough is enough. And I think we're good.
Minister Habet, you're hearing in essence a lot about sustainability. And I want to ask you to look at your particular portfolio with regard to solid waste management, because beautification of the country, both for visitors and of course for residents, is very important. Let's talk about that work on your side.
Yes, certainly. We have looked at it certainly from the standpoint of what we have been doing domestically, but also looking at how the appearance is towards our visitors or our tourists. It is a difficult situation because as a small country, you produce so much solid waste, but then you're looking at how can you manage it sustainably. We have a project that started some years ago through assistance from the IDB. We built 11 transfer stations in the municipalities and the two cities, and one regional landfill on the Western Highway where all this material is supposed to be trucked and managed. We have been operating 7 out of the 11. This June, we are operationalizing 2 more in the north, and then we have 2 more in the south that need to be operationalized. However, this is only from the standpoint of the municipalities, but we have many larger villages. We have 94 villages, Minister, that do not have a project where we are moving the solid waste to a transfer station or elsewhere. So we have to work on that. If you look at recycling, it's a good buzzword, but can we do it? Do we have the volumes to be able to do the recycling? Some of it has commenced. We have an act for recycling and everything, but most of it is packaged and exported because we don't have the facilities to do it. We have started programs, for example, where we are separating garbage as pilot projects. We have one municipality where we have given out some containers to separate the organic materials. 42% of the organic material the solid waste is comprised of about 42%. If we can be able to utilize that and not put it into the landfill will last us several more years. Currently, each cell, which costs us about $5 to $6 million, only lasts about 4 years. We have been filling those, capping it off with clay. This year, the contracts are calling for putting liners, so that then instead of putting 4 inches of material, you put a liner that's less than 1/4 inch, and so you can extend the life of the landfill. We have been working with several communities, several NGOs, doing cleanup campaigns in the ocean space. But also we have had some ridge to reef programs where we try to see how we can manage the solid waste that enters the rivers and streams, which will eventually enter into the sea and then affect our ocean space, our marine space, and the reef. That is absolutely very important because of the microplastics and everything else. But also, we have to be cognizant that that environmentally conscious traveler who books a room in the mountain and drinks this clean, pristine water also wants to know that when she moves from there to the ocean space, in the marine space, and is diving at the reef, knows that that same clean water that she drank there went down through several communities downstream, and is that same clean water that you're using there. So to avoid the contamination.
I want to ask you to just stay with you, because I want you to talk about how you manage the mangroves.
Yes, certainly. So we have, under our ministry, the Forest Department is in charge of mangroves, but we also have good collaboration with the Ministry of Blue Economy, Fisheries, and the Coastal Zone Management Authority. And so we work in collaboration. The difficult part there for management, especially for development, is that any developer that comes in and acquires a parcel of land and wants to develop a resort or a hotel will eventually have to tear down some mangrove. They have to get a permit from the Forest Department, and then they have to supply an EIA document to see if they get approval from the Department of Environment, depending on the size of the project. It is a difficult situation because that is where you start looking at the balance between development and conservation. Not an easy thing. We are always on the news. So it is difficult, but right now we have looked at areas where we have some degraded mangrove areas, and we have a restoration program where we are already looking to replant some 12,000 hectares of mangroves in those degraded areas, so as in a way to replenish what has been lost. But we have also looked at how the Forest Department can implement a policy where any developer that tears down some mangrove will have to also replant some.
Minister Mahler, I can't let you get away without talking about the importance of young people in the storage sector. How do you attract them? How do you sustain them? How do you encourage them to stay with this industry in the first place? Because we have so many young people. We really need to be sure that we mobilize them as part of our overall development. But tourism would seem to be a critical sector in which to deploy them literally.
Good question. As Minister of Youth, that is an important component of the work that we want to do. Yeah. So if you look at the makeup of the population of Belize, 70% of the population would be considered youth, or from 0 to 29. The definition of youth, is between 14 and 29. And then all the rest, but still I'd call all of them youth. So 70%. So by nature, we have a very young population. We have a relatively young workforce, and tourism absorbs many of them. So we work closely with the schools. We have the Tourism Training Institute, or the Elevate programs that we have launched, and we go out into the schools, into the communities to engage our young people. We have invited many of them here to the Sustainable Tourism Conference, and it is important to get them exposure. In the past, we've worked with Disney to show them what we don't want to be. So we used to send our young people to Disney to do some internship to see how hard it is, this business is, right, on a daily basis. But for us, it's training at the core, educating them about the history of tourism, educating them about the importance of tourism, the socioeconomic impact it provides, and you can only do that if you train and educate. I think you will go a long way whenever you do that.
All right, so Yeah, in the remaining time, I want to do a quick fire here. The question, I suspect, from an audience like this is, what's next? What can you, as leaders of this effort, one thing that would be the most dramatic thing that you could make happen without winning the lottery? That's a start, right? What is it? What is it? Just think. What could it be?
Well, for me,
that would so excite everybody here, and they'll run out of the room and say, "But we're going back to our country, we're doing this."
We get a few $1 billion to do whatever we need to do.
That's the easy part.
Yeah.
That's a lottery.
But there has to be a total national awakening that sustainable development happens in each household, in each individual. And whenever you have that, and like I said, like I say to our people, God has blessed us, like our anthem says, with wealth untold. If you go all across this country, it's there. If you see our people, it's there. But we have to love it, respect it, and want to preserve it.
Okay. So there we go.
It has to be a bottom-up approach. I think too many times as a policymakers, we think we have all the answers, and we don't. And we have to start relying on our communities, the people we serve, to also be custodians of our islands, of our territories. In Tobago, for instance, and I heard it yesterday, the Castara model. Without governmental intervention, it's the one area that has the best tourism yield. A lot of return visitors as well. And we also have that on neighboring Trinidad, again, in the rural communities that feel as if they can access the governmental services as readily. And you would be amazed that these are the communities where we really get that solid, authentic tourism product and coming out of it in a sustainable way. And so I believe we need to get into the communities, keep our feet and ears on the ground, ensure that our hearts are really in it, and have the communities lead us, not just sit from our big fancy offices and come up with the policies with our technocrats and believe we have all the answers. So it must be people-centered, and have the people who are actually custodians in their respective communities lead the charge and take that information from them and be so guided by them. Yeah.
Mr. Habet?
Yes, I think that we can't leave this room without having the discussion, at least the knowledge of who it is that the tourism dollar is going to benefit. So you speak about the communities. We talking that now we're going to looking at value versus the number of tourists. That is all good. But yesterday, Dr. Palacio mentioned an issue that maybe many of us don't want to discuss. And he noticed the issue of peasantry, where our local owners of the coastline have sold out their properties to the investors, and they got some money, went farther back, and now they can't even walk the coastline because they're saying, this is my property. Panya mentioned in her talk yesterday the issue of gentrification, because that is exactly what is happening. So who is it that is benefiting? When we don't want to hear that the really, and Minister, I was mentioned, and it's good information, that tourism represents 40% of our GDP. But what is the personal GDP to that person that is on the coastline?
Yesterday, actually, I told, I was speaking to the chairman as I was listening to everyone speak, and I said that I think people forget that the power is in the hands of the people. Of course, we are policymakers, but the true power lies in the hand of our people. And also our people fail because of the lack of knowledge. Now, I believe we're at a stage where bridging the gap between the reality of what is a tourism product and who does it benefit is more pivotal than now more than ever, that action needs to be put in place of lip service. And when I say this, I'm grateful. I have Grégoire Dumel that is here in the room with us that has been a civil servant working at the tourism board for more than 20 years. And the integration of having tourism awareness, tourism classes in the schools has been fundamental to building our tourism product. I mean, I heard you say 40%, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why back home we don't say that tourism is 100% our economy.
Yeah,
our economy is based on tourism. Because we don't export anything, we import everything. And I'm just gonna cut it short here, but I say so to say what? Bridging the gap between the reality that surrounds the tourism product is essential. Our youth that needs to understand the tourism role. So again, in St. Martin, what we did after 2017 was put in place a tourism campaign, which you have to understand, I am, you are, we are tourism. What does that mean? From the person that receives you on the airport, straight down to the person that drops you back at that airport, has a role to play. Yeah. And every time I say that, I think some of you might get sick of this story, but I got the opportunity to work in tourism only in 2017. And here I'm telling you that St. Martin, main economy is tourism. My mom worked in the tourism industry for years, but as a housekeeper. And I'm sorry, I never looked at that as a tourism job, a linked job. So I looked at it as, for you to be in the tourism industry and consider, then you must be the director of a hotel or one of these fancy people in these offices. Yeah. But coming down, we realize more than ever that your tourism product, something that can never be replaced, the ingredient itself is you, the people. Yeah. It's you. So at the end, I'm going to say that an action that needs to happen is bridging that gap in terms of that reality of a tourism product and what it means to be sustainable on all levels, so we can be responsible and we can be true actors in this tourism industry.
Excellent way to wrap this up, don't you think? No questions, please. We can do that in the break. Yes. Or can we just one question from the floor? Bossman? No? Okay, fine. That's it. Thank you. Thank you again.
And that was a really good session as well. We would have had the insights and experiences and strategies for shaping tourism from our ministers.